Hi, this is My Keys to Music and I'm Mark, and in this video we're going to talk about the Nord Stage 3 and the external function. I had to interrupt this video just for a second to apologize. I used the word external instead of the word extern throughout this video. The official term is extern. This is a command set or a section of the Nord Stage 3 that allows you to connect to a MIDI device and control it with a little bit more fidelity than you would if you weren't using the external function. If you struggled like me to get this working out of the box, then you'll definitely want to stay tuned till the end of this video. By the end of it, you will be feeling more like an expert in this area, and I can almost promise you that you will get your external function to work with whatever device you want to connect to by the end of it. All right, stay tuned for more. Okay, we're going MIDI out on the Nord Stage 3, and we're going into a MIDI in on my keyboard module. Nothing fancy. Okay, the keyboard module I'm using here today is an XV-3080. This is a Roland rack mount sound module, and I happen to be using steel drums. Okay, I'm going to start with the Royal Grand 3D, which is A11. Again, I haven't changed anything from the factory default settings. At this point, it's a brand new program in terms of settings. So what I want to do is I want to get a bass in the left hand, nothing on the right hand as far as the Stage 3 is concerned. And then my hope is to have steel drums only on the right side, powered by and affected by the external command within the Nord Stage 3. So let's do that now. The first thing we need to do is generically the MIDI for your Nord Stage 3 is set up in such a way that it's sending MIDI on channel 1 in a global aspect, as you can see here. And that's probably the first source of confusion and potential frustration, because you take your Nord 3, you connect it from MIDI out to whatever MIDI device you're in, and yeah, okay, it works. You can control things, but what about the external command? How do I get it to just be controlled by the external? So the very first thing you need to do, in my opinion, to make this super simple for you, is to remove channel 1. In other words, turn that global MIDI setting to off. That means your Nord keyboard won't send any MIDI signal out in a global aspect. And then, of course, panel A, B are also off as well. So that's the first thing you want to do. And then for good measure, as a follow-up to that, I would go up a page here and then go to Control Change Mode, where it says Send and Receive. And I would say I don't want to do any control change whatsoever, and I don't want to do any program change whatsoever. Just turn the whole thing off, because I don't want to do any of it from a generic standpoint. I only want to do it through the external. So that right there alone is half of it. That's half of what people are frustrated with when they're using external for the first time, or at least what I've been frustrated with. So the next thing you want to do is you want to turn on the external area of your Nord Stage 3, and to do that, it's all under this external button. So hold the shift key and we'll select the external settings. And then there's 9 pages of information here within that. Let's just skip the first page, and you'll see here that I now can start to see, panel A, which I have selected. Notice if I select B, it'll show me panel B, but panel A is showing me MIDI channel sending signal on channel 14. This potentially would be the second area of frustration, because by default, the external is only set up to transmit signals on channel 14. So for the simplicity of, again, this basic demo, we want to change that MIDI channel back to channel 1. And so long as my steel drums on my Roland device are accepting input on channel 1, which I have done that ahead of time, then my external settings here, at least for panel A, will actually work. The moment I click this external button here on the right side of my Nord Stage 3, voila, I'm going to be sending MIDI signal on channel 1, and life will be awesome after that. Now, if you're using a program that also uses channel B, or panel B, I should say, that's not going to work either if you aren't receiving something on channel 15. So technically speaking, you could go ahead and do panel B on channel 1 as well, to know that both panel A and B submit MIDI signals on channel 1. Okay, also note that this external area, everything to do with external settings, these 9 pages of information, every bit of that, with one exception on page 9, the global soft through, that particular setting does actually extend itself through any program you might change. But the rest of the pages here in the external section are in fact program specific. In this case, it's A11. So if I leave A11 and come back, I've lost all of those settings and I have to start all over again. So the key is that those external settings, and that's actually a good thing because you want to have that kind of fidelity where you can have external settings different for each program. For some of you, that might be a big advantage. For some of you, that might be a huge disadvantage because your setup is a lot simpler and you don't want to have to go through each program now and change the external settings. But there's good news. You can have your cake and eat it too. If you prefer to have these settings applicable to each and every program, you can set that there, or you can set it to be shared, which means you set it once and it applies to all programs. Here I'm going to leave it on the program specific settings, and we'll look at how to save our program with those specific extern settings. So with that said, I'm going to save my information here on Royal Grand 3D so that my external settings, the ones that I've just done, are saved permanently. Again, I've set my NordStage setup with a default setting, so when I click store, I'm going to get an error message that says it's going to be disabled because my memory protection is on. So I'll quickly turn memory protection off by holding the shift button and going into the system area. It's the very first page, memory protect on. Just toggle this knob here to off, exit that, and now my protection is off, and now I can click store and store. And now Royal Grand with those external settings, let's go take a quick look at them again. It was on page 2. Panel A is on MIDI channel 1. Panel B is also on MIDI channel 1. And the rest of it, I'm just going to leave as default. We could literally spend 2 or 3 hours just on all the details and the subtleties of all these external settings and all the different things you can do and control. It's just a never-ending possibility list. But for now, that will get us the basics. So now that I've done that, my steel drum will start playing the moment I hit external. Now I'm about to move the camera and show you that, but before I do, I want to just show you the setup here. Okay, now what I'd like to do next is set up so that I have a bass in the left hand and my steel drums playing on the external function in the right hand. So in order to do that, I actually want to split the keyboard. So let's split the keyboard now. So just one click of the split button. Now I have other videos which I will post above in the card window where you can see all about how to create splits, and I go through great detail on how to do that. So that would be another whole 15, 20, 30 minutes just to explain all that right now, so I won't do that. So, but I'm splitting the keyboard into two, and I'm split between these two keys here. That's just information. And I want a bass in the left hand, so I'm not going to need a piano, so I'm going to turn off my piano engine, if you will. And over here I'm going to turn on my synth engine, and I'm going to double click so that my synth engine is playing only on the left side of the split. Perfect. And then I'm going to set it up so that I have a bass sound. Let me just bring the camera down that way so you can see what that looks like, because that might be just as interesting here. And you could do a whole nother 2 or 3 videos just on how to deal with changing to a simple bass sound on the synth side. But I'll whiz through that right now. I've got it set for sample. Then I'll use this knob to go all the way up to a bass, which I've already passed here. Let me just see here. Here it is, Hofner 500-1 pick.
Bass, my old Hofner bass, my little baby.
Let's hear what that sounds like. I can barely hear it, and you know why? Because my synth setup has probably a little attack, lousy decay, lousy release. So let me just quickly adjust these. I'm going to put my attack. Yeah, you can start to hear it. I'm going to put my decay somewhere in here, and my release maybe at a 4. And I'll change the frequency here a little bit. I think that's good for now. Okay, now that I've got a bass in that left hand, let's go right to the external area, and we'll focus in on that. Okay, so if I play on my right hand, you can't see me playing on my right hand, but if I play on my right hand, I hear nothing until I hit the external. Now, let me just double click and get those steel drums just on the right side of the keyboard, and let's go for broke. There they are. My gosh, I have steel drums playing under the external area, and they're a little on the high side in terms of pitch, so let me hold the shift key or push the shift button and go down an octave or 2. That's more like it. Maybe up 1. That's good. Okay, let's hear what this sounds like together with the bass. Perfect. So now I have my Nord Stage 3 pumping out some steel drums. Okay, there's a couple other settings here that you might be interested in. You already saw how we can split the zone. You already saw that I can turn it on and off. I can depict the zone. That's a huge, huge, huge benefit right there for any external control that you might want. There's some nice extras here that you have. Notice how my setting is set to volume, and this knob here dictates the volume so long as volume is selected. So I can actually raise and lower the volume if my external device was volume capable through MIDI. You can see here how that can literally directly affect the volume, which is so handy rather than reaching down to the controller or the rack mount device and turning it down there or turning it off or down on your mixing board. It's just nice to have those extra options. And then if I push this button here, you can see that I can assign and control my MIDI control change. So I can set what control parameter I want, and then I can determine the value of that control parameter, which I think was defaulted to 2 if I wasn't mistaken. And then this is over here where you can actually set this to change your program up and down. Which is going to be tricky business because you really have to know, you have to have receiving capabilities on the other side and so forth. And then this final option up down here, which if I hold the shift key, I can choose either the pitch stick to manipulate my sound. So let's just see what a pitch stick might sound like with a steel drum. And then I also can choose to invoke the sustain pedal. And that's your external functions. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I know for me, when I first got the external function to work, it was like a revelation. And I just used it really seriously for the first time just last week on a gig where I actually did use steel drums on the gig. And the band was thoroughly impressed because no one had realized or ever heard steel drums from a Nord before. So I had to admit at the end of the night that it wasn't actually the Nord making the sounds, but it was actually my old trusty Roland rack mount synth. And they were impressed, and more impressed with how we could split the Nord into so many different ways and control it at the fidelity that we were controlling it at. So it was good stuff. So I hope that that you can take advantage of this feature. It is really actually very simple to set up. It can get very elaborate though, and I encourage you to explore some of the other things you can do. Connect to GarageBand, connect to MainStage on your Apple, or maybe your favorite software on the Windows side, which I'm sure there's a ton. But anyway, if you like this content, feel free to subscribe. My name is Mark. This is My Keys to Music, and what we do on this channel are how-to videos on your Nord keyboards as I learn it myself. And then I'm also going to be exploring other things like GarageBand, and we'll be doing things like some composition and definitely work with arpeggiators and things like that. So there's a lot more to come and a lot more information I have to share on this matter. So if you want to subscribe, feel free, or share it with your friends and do all that good stuff. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.